Namaste friends, and welcome back to The Way Om Yoga. My name is Sarah Baka and I'm going to be your instructor for this tutorial. So today I wanted to break down step by step just some of the building blocks and some of the foundational steps that you'll need to successfully come into Bakasana, otherwise known as crow pose in yoga. So some prop recommendations before we get started. You'll see behind me I have a stack of blankets here just at the ready if you need that for support, and I'll explain how we'll use those later on in the practice. I also have a set of yoga blocks, so if you have, any type of like bolster cushion or something that kind of would resemble this shape, and maybe a large textbook or something like that, that'll definitely come in handy as we go along in this tutorial. So for this practice, I did not include a warm-up sequence. However, I will put a link in the description for two classes, Sun Salutation A and Sun Salutation B. So if you're not warmed up right now, I highly recommend you go and do those classes or just some type of warm-up before you get into this. 2 to 3 rounds of each of the Sun Salutation A and B will be sufficient to warm you up for this. But for the sake of keeping this tutorial brief and just getting into kind of the bulk of Bakasana, I did not include a warm-up before this. But go ahead, grab your props, make sure you're warmed up, and go ahead and meet me in the middle of your mat here. So before we get started, I thought it would be fair to show you what Bakasana or what crow pose looks like before we start breaking down some of the building blocks and some of the foundational pieces that you'll need to successfully come into this pose, okay? So go ahead and just take a seat on your mat for a moment, and I'm just going to show you very briefly what this posture will look like. So I'm starting off in this crouched position here. I'm going to bring the knees to the backs of my triceps, and don't worry, I'm going to explain step by step in just a moment what we're coming into, but just to kind of give you an image of what this posture can look like, this would be the final piece here for crow pose, otherwise known as Bakasana. So we're going to go ahead and get started by coming onto all fours here. And what we're going to play around with specifically here, I want you in just a moment to really exaggerate your cat pose. So notice as I was coming into that posture, you may have noticed my spine rounding. That's called spinal flexion in anatomy physiology. So as we're going through this warm-up, I really want you to clue into or pay attention to how the spine feels when it's in that state of flexion, in that state of rounding, drawing the navel in towards your spine. And we'll go ahead and get that now. So starting from all fours, tabletop pose, hands and knees. On your next inhalation, let's go ahead and come up into cow pose. On an inhale, exhale, here we go. We're gonna round the spine, and notice that I'm like rounding through the shoulders here. Shoulders are coming apart, and I'm drawing the navel in towards my core, towards my center here. And then on an inhale, once again, let's come into cow. And again, you could take these at your own pace. Again, just paying attention to this state of flexion here that you're gonna feel in cat pose. And we'll just get a few rounds like this, just nice and easy, gentle warm up for that spine. So a key foundational element here in crow pose is spinal mobility, specifically spinal flexion. Good, we'll get a couple more rounds. Again, just take these at your own pace, with your own breath cadence. Good, make this your last round. Wherever you are, I'm gonna take one more cow, one more cat pose. Completing this round. Go ahead and come off the wrist for just a moment and take a seat. Well done. We're gonna go ahead and continue to add on to our next foundational block here, which I feel like is a solid upper body strength, specifically chaturanga. So in the yoga sequence, when we lower down from plank pose, coming forward onto our mat, lowering down all the way onto the belly, we're creating this 90-degree shelf here with the elbows as we lower down slowly. And notice that my elbows are not like splayed out to the side, but they're hugging rather nice and close towards my rib cage. So we're gonna just take a couple chaturangas from hands and knees. You're welcome to take this in like a full plank, but just because we're focusing on this area specifically, I welcome you just to take this from hands and knees, okay? So hands are shoulder distance apart. I'm gonna come into plank pose here with the knees down like I just mentioned. And then in one smooth motion, I'm gonna start to shift my weight forward, so I'm feeling that, that the shoulder heads are coming past my wrist. And again, creating that 90-degree shelf here, nice and strong and supported. I'm gonna lower down, and then I'm gonna inhale, come back up. Exhale, lower yourself down. Inhale, come up. Let's do 2 more. Exhale, chaturanga. Inhale, lowers or raises you back up. And then last one, chaturanga. Inhale, come up. Again, take a moment, take a seat, come off the wrist. So a really solid foundational chaturanga, either by just practicing it isolated like I just did, or integrating it in your warm-up, specifically in sun salutation A and B, you're gonna see that there, is really important for setting up for crow pose, okay? Because that's what we're balancing on, more or less. Okay, so now we're gonna get into some hip mobility. So if you have those blankets nearby and your yoga blocks, this could be really helpful and beneficial to you. So I'm gonna show you briefly, before I add the props, what we're coming into. So we're coming into what's known as Malasana squat, so yogi squat in yoga. I think this is also called garland pose. So notice that I'm sinking back here, and my upper arms here are just resting against my inner thighs here. Now, for some of us, the heels might be up off the floor, so what I recommend for that, take your stack of blankets, you might just need one, but I grabbed 2 for this practice. Might be helpful to anchor your heels on something supportive like a blanket. And honestly, I can feel my hips opening up just a little bit more because I'm not really concerned about the heels making contact with the yoga mat, if that makes sense. So I'm pressing my outer upper arms against my inner thighs to bring my spine up nice and tall. But specifically what I'm focusing on here is getting into the inner thigh and the outer hip region. So hip mobility is going to be also another important component as we build on crow pose, Bakasana. Another option, friends, if this isn't working for you for whatever reason, you can always sit on a yoga block here, like so, and come into it this way as well. And of course you can play around with the different heights of your props. And again, like a large book will be just fine as well, or maybe a stack of blankets. But we're gonna focus on opening up through the hips here. And again, just remembering this specific setup here, because I'm gonna show you a beginner way to approach crow pose from Malasana in just a moment. All right, friends, we're gonna stay for, let's go for just 2 more rounds of breath. So nice steady inhale through the nose. Exhale. 1 more. Inhale. Exhale, let that go. Beautiful job. So this is another one, a good one to come to, especially if the hips are tight, incorporating that into your practice to help you come into Bakasana. So the last thing I'm going to show you, and again, foundational pose number 4, I guess you could say, we really want to have nice and flexible hamstrings for this as well. As you can see, as I was coming forward, I had to pick up my back legs to finish off the pose, so having nice flexible hamstrings is going to be important. Now, if you need extra padding, you can use your blankets, but I'm going to come back into tabletop pose once again. So I'm taking my hands about shoulder distance apart and my knees about hip distance apart here. I'm going to start with my right leg coming up and back behind me. That's an inhale. As I exhale, I'm going to start to curl my body in as I draw that knee in towards my nose here. Now notice here, do you recognize this? This is that upper back rounding that we did. Remember that spinal flexion we had just a moment ago in our cat pose. Inhale, I'm going to bring it back up and focusing again on strengthening the back side of my body. I'm getting into the back of the leg here, into the hamstring, and just getting used to moving my back leg through space in this motion, okay? This is a great way to strengthen the posterior side of the body, meaning the back side of the body. Good. Let's do 1 more here. Beautiful job, everybody. Go ahead and set that knee down. Let's bring the left leg up and back behind us as you inhale. Exhale, we'll curl it in. Inhale. Exhale. Good, and we'll continue like this just a few more rounds. Again, working on mobility in the back of the legs, working on strength in the back of the legs. Good. Okay, let's do one more. All right, beautiful job, everyone. Take a moment, take a seat, get off those wrists for a moment if you need to get a sip of water. I'm gonna go through some ways you can approach Bakasana from beginner to intermediate to a little bit more advanced, okay? So starting with beginner, just take a moment just to look at what I'm doing, and then we'll do it all together. So starting from that Malasana squat that I showed you not too long ago. So from this position here, I'll face the camera this way. So starting from a squatting position here, I want you to think of these like two opposing forces. And what I mean by that, I'm gonna face this way once again. So I want you to think of squeezing that inner thigh against the upper arm here, and upper arm against the inner thigh. So it's kind of like, you'll feel it. It's like this kind of, this opposing motion. You can kind of see my hands like trembling just a little bit here from this activation. I want you to keep that. That's gonna help you balance here in just a moment. So with this activation, right, these two opposing forces happening, I want you to take chaturanga in the arms. So I'm gonna have you bring your hands forward, and we're gonna practice just shifting our weight forward like so. So now I'm gonna turn this way just so you can see. And if you're just starting out, with this, sometimes it's handy to have just a little bit of extra security, literally a security blanket. So if you accidentally topple forward, you have a nice soft landing, okay? But that's not gonna happen for any of you guys. So starting from Malasana squat, once again, remember that activation. So we're squeezing the inner thighs against the upper arms against the inner thighs. I'm gonna move this just a little bit ahead of me here. And again, I want you to think of taking chaturanga in the arms. So I'm gonna come up onto the balls of the feet, think strong chaturanga arms. And today, friends, this might just be it. So just practicing distributing your weight forward and back. Just getting the hang of this action. For some of us, maybe one foot might come up off the ground, right? We could play around with the other foot. And then maybe, just maybe, when we feel very comfortable with this, we can bring both feet up. And again, using that blanket just for extra support here. Squeezing, 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 squeezing. And then come out of it, taking breaks, okay? So let's go ahead, get that set up if you don't have it already. Meet me in the middle of your mat. We're gonna take that beginner style approach to Bakasana. So starting from your squat, again, those two opposing actions happening in the upper body. Strong chaturanga arms. Take breaks if you need to, friends. This is a lot. This is a lot of activation going on, right? We're being mobile in the spine. We need to have upper body strength. We need to have mobility in the hips and strength in the hamstrings. So it's a lot. You be gracious with yourself, especially if this is your first time. And today, you know, if this is a lot to integrate, today your work might just be coming into Malasana and working on that hip opening, okay? But if you're with me, let's go ahead and come back into our yogi squat. Chaturanga arms, squeezing that upper body here. Let's go ahead and come forward, playing with the balance. Whew. Honestly, I think it's a little harder coming into it from a Malasana squat, but it's very good practice. Okay, friends, so I'm gonna move on to a more intermediate style of approaching this. So I like to use a yoga block from time to time, especially if I have a hard time getting my hips up and over in crow pose. And I'm gonna show you how to do that in just a minute here. So starting from this crouch position again, I'm gonna invite you this time to bring the knees to the backs of the triceps, so the backs of the arms here, okay? I'm gonna move my blanket just a little bit forward here. Okay, so once again, knees to the backs of the triceps. I'm gonna come up onto the balls of my feet, and I'm gonna start to distribute my weight forward, coming into chaturanga. And again, friends, this just might be it. Maybe a rocking forward and back, getting used to distributing your weight. Okay, and just like we did in that beginner sequence, Maybe some of us might bring one leg up and sink it back down. Maybe the other leg comes up, back down. From here, maybe both legs might come up in this one. Okay. Balancing, balancing. Good. Whew. Take a moment here. Set your prop off to the side if you need to. And we're gonna do this all one more time, okay? So you can either do that beginner version I showed you, approaching Bakasana from a yogi squat. You can either take that intermediate version I just showed you. This time, I'm gonna take this without the block underneath me, okay? And you can still keep your blanket forward in front of you. All right, friends, go ahead and find your setup. I'm gonna bring my knees to the backs of the triceps here. And again, starting to come forward, coming up onto the balls of the feet. Strong upper body. Remember, we're rounding here, just slightly in that upper back. Good. Picking the feet up off the ground, or just playing with the balance, distributing your weight forward and back. Good. Good, good, good. And setting it down. Whew. I'm definitely getting tired here, friends. One more way you can approach this too, that I'm not going to demonstrate right now because I'm a little cooked myself, but another variation of this is coming into crow pose. And you know, we had the bent chaturanga arms. Some of you can work on straightening those arms slightly. Let's see if I can try to do it. I'm a student first and foremost as well, so let's go ahead and come forward. Good. And you can start to straighten. I still kind of have a slight micro bend, but that's okay. Good. All right. Whew. Take a moment, take a seat, shake out the wrist, get a sip of water. So you are welcome to revisit all of those building blocks and just start incorporating that more into your existing practice to help you set up successfully for crow pose. Thank you guys so much for joining me in this practice, joining me in this tutorial. I'd like to hear from you in the comments, you know, kind of where are you at in your crow pose journey? I would love to see your progress, what you're working on. If you want to connect with me on social media, I'll have a link in the description to my Instagram if you'd just like to show me kind of, yeah, again, your progress in working with Bakasana. And as always, guys, just thank you so much for sharing your practice with me. And until next time, namaste.